G'day and welcome back to the Mech Lab. I'm your special guest, the Mech Hunter. Now today we're going to be going over how to hunt down and kill a mech. Right, so first of all we should understand how a mech is put together. Right, so we've got the legs, the torsos, center torso obviously, and the arms and the head. Right, so you can think of the gyro a lot like the mech's spine, right? It's what allows it to stand up and sort of move around, right? So once the gyro is out, the mech is immobile. It can't move anymore at all. It can't maintain its balance. So the gyro can take 2 critical hits before it's destroyed. Now you might say, if you're new to Battletech, what's a critical hit? What do you mean by that? Well, I'll go over briefly here. So you've got your armor and then you've got your internal structure, right? So your armor protects the internals of your mech, but once the armor is all stripped off, then you're stuck with just your internal structure. So once you're in there, the enemy can roll 2 dice every time they hit that location, and if they roll a high enough number, they get a critical. And then they roll on another chart, which determines which of these slots in the mech. You can see empty, 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 empty. Anything that's armor or empty gets re-rolled, and then they keep rolling until they hit something, right? So if you crit the arm, maybe you get the shoulder, maybe you'll blow out the SRM4, the weapon system. If you're in the center torso, you might get the gyro, or you might hit the engine, or you might get this large laser. Now there's also through armor criticals, which is a great way to take out a mech, but it's completely random, right? If you roll on the hit location table and you get 2 1s, it means that you get a through armor critical, and then you roll again to see where you get that through armor critical to hit, right? So if you get a through armor critical on the center torso, and then you roll a 12 on the crit, on the amount of crits that you get 2 crits, right? And if you roll both on the gyro, boom, that mech is basically taken out of the game. It can't move anymore, so it can still like prop itself up and shoot its guns, but it's basically a lot less effective overall. Now, the second way to take out the mech, other than you take out the spine, obviously someone's pretty knackered. But that won't actually kill the mech completely. So what you can do then is you can crit out the engine, right? So the engine can take 3 critical hits before it is non-functional, right? The engine's kind of like the heart of the mech. Once there's nothing pumping energy into the mech anymore, the fusion engine, if it gets destroyed or is no longer functional, it'll shut down, and the mech will no longer work, right? It can't fire its weapons, it can't do anything. So I've chosen this mech specifically, it's a bushwhacker, because it has engine slots in the left and right torso. So if you look on here, this has an XL, stands for extra light, engine. So what that does, it makes the engine weigh a lot less, but it puts critical slots for the engine into the side torsos. Now, like I said before, if you get 3 engine criticals, your mech is dead. It can't function anymore. So each of the side torsos, you can see, has 3 engine slots, which means that your side torso, if you've got an XL engine, if it's taken out, you're dead. That mech is gone, right? It's especially dangerous on mechs like this, because we're going to go over our next way to kill a mech. If a mech doesn't have case, I'll go over what case does in a second, and you roll a critical on this location and you hit the ammo explodes, all right? And it does as much damage as the number of shots, right? So for an LB10, autocannons do the amount of damage that's listed on their title, right? So LB10 does 10 damage. If you hit a full ammo bin of 10 shots, you take 100 damage, right? Now, if you look at the side torso, it's got 22 armor here, and 13 internal structure, so it's got 25 total. So, if anything hits these ammo bins when they even have one shot or a couple of shots left in them, the mech goes bye-bye, right? Because the torso gets blown up. Now, the case, what it does is it prevents the damage from overflowing into the center torso, right? When you hit a mech, if you hit a location that's no longer there, for example, if you hit the right arm and the right arm's been blown off, it transfers the damage into that torso, right? And it will transfer it centrally if the torso is gone as well, right? So let's say your right arm's blown off, you've only got a couple of points of armor left, and someone crits out your ammo bin that's full because you've been firing off the cluster rounds at a helicopter or something. Your mech is basically going to blow up. It's going to take 100 damage to the right torso, which will take out the engine and kill the mech. So I don't like XL engines very much, personally. I'm going to make a video in the future on why I don't like those. Stay tuned for that. And then we've gone over the engine and the gyro. Those are two of the most common ways to take out a mech. But you can also take out the legs. So if you blow off one leg, obviously the mech can't really walk around anymore. Its leg is broken or blown off. So it's pretty much prone for the rest of the game once it's got one of its legs off, right? It can technically stand up with some special rules, but not very likely. You'd have to be a real ace pilot to pull that off. But if you blow off the other leg, the mech then is dead, right? If you take out both legs, the mech can no longer move at all. Its mobility is completely gone, and the mech is dead, right? Now, the last way to take out a mech is by taking out the head, right? You shoot someone in the spine, you'll knock them down, they're not moving anywhere. You shoot someone in the heart, they're dead, right? They're not getting up. Shoot someone in the head, same deal, right? You take out the brain, it's gone. The mech warrior is kind of like the brain, right? And then we also have these critical slots up here, right? If the cockpit gets taken out, I believe the mech is done, right? As well as the sensors. If you take out both sensors, the mech can no longer function. It's blind, essentially. It can't see, you can't see anything other than like just seeing out of the cockpit. So I think without sensors, the mech basically becomes non-functional. And the life support basically makes it so the mech is unable to support the pilot inside. Like they don't have air, and the air conditioning, which sort of keeps the cockpit from overheating due to the heat from the engine, is no longer functional. So the mech can't function anymore. The pilot has to eject because they're going to burn to death, right? And then you can also take out the pilot itself, right? So the pilot is susceptible to damage, right? So if you hit the cockpit with a shot, the pilot takes a hit, right? They get rattled around in the cockpit and it injures them. Pilots can take a total of 5 hits before they're dead. Now, how else can you deal damage to the pilot? Well, there's a couple of ways. You can deal heat to the mech and cause it to overheat. You can use flamers, or you can just, you know, if the mech warrior overheats the mech by themselves, they have to check, and essentially the cockpit is so hot that they start getting burns. Right? Maybe they touch a hot panel and it burns their hand, and now they've lost a little bit of blood due to the burn or something like that. That can cause the pilot to be injured. Now, if the mech falls down, right? There's a few different ways to make the mech fall down. You can kick it, which will cause them to have to make a check to stand up. I covered that in my last video, how to play Battletech. And if you take at least 20 damage in any phase, you will also have to make a check. Now, if you fall down, you get to make a check to see if you, don't bonk your head, but usually they will. And every time a pilot takes an injury, they have a chance to be knocked unconscious. Now, once a pilot is unconscious, they make a consciousness check every round to see if they wake up. And the more injuries they have, the less likely they are to wake up, right? So, that covers pretty much the most standard ways to kill a mech. If you completely destroy the cockpit as well, and you can see cockpit has 9 armor, the head, and 3 internal structure. So if you hit it with anything that does 10 damage, and you roll a double crit, and you hit the life supports, both of them, or both sensors, the mech is dead, right? It can't function anymore. Or, if you deal 12 damage to the cockpit, it destroys it completely, and the mech is again non-functional. A lot of people like to bring weapons that deal 12 or more damage for this specific reason, because if you shoot a mech in the head with a Gauss rifle, it's dead. Now, to hit the mech in the head, you have to roll double sixes on the location table, but it happens more than you might think. You know, it's a pretty low chance, but it's still a reasonable one. And then if you use a mech that can punch for at least 12 damage, and I'll tell you right now, if your mech has triple strength armor and is at least 55 tons, it will do a 12 damage punch. Or if it's it's 1 damage for every 10 tons. So I think the only way to do that is with triple strength armor. But when you roll punches, you roll just 1d6, right? It's called the punch table. And on a 6, it hits the head. So it's a 1 in 6 chance. And I've actually had in the past where I've punched a mech twice with my Wolverine, and both of them hit the head. So I caught out a cockpit by punching it twice. I just got really lucky, right? So you can go for those long shot odds, and sometimes it works out. Now, the last way to kill a mech is by overheating it. If you get the mech hot enough, I believe you have to get to an overheat level of about 25. Once you reach that point, the mech has to roll to see if it explodes. The engine is so hot at that point that the reactor might just have a meltdown, and it can cause your mech to go up in flames. Now, that's pretty unlikely, but if you're using a heat strategy, like bringing a bunch of plasma rifles and flamers, or Inferno SRMs, things like that, it can be pretty effective to try and overheat an enemy mech and just melt the pilot inside, or to just make the mech explode. Now, if you want to salvage a mech, say in a campaign, for example, you don't want to really core it out, right? Obviously, if you destroy the center torso, go through all of the internal structure and the armor, then the mech is dead. It gets all of the engines are crit out, the gyros crit out. There's nothing left, right? But if you core out the mech, you can't really fix it, right? You can't replace the entire center torso on a mech normally in a campaign. So the best ways to kill mechs in order to keep them intact is engine crits, gyro crits, and if they have side torsos with a light or XL engine, light engines have 2 crit slots here, right? 1, 2, whereas XL have 3. If you're a clanner, XLs only have 2, and I don't think they have light engines at all because they've just got the better XL engines. But if you can crit out the engine, or blow off both legs, or blow out the head, those are all ways that you can salvage a mech mostly intact. The only way that an engine is completely destroyed is if it takes, I think, 6 crits. So if you blow out one side torso, the engine's completely fine. You can literally just replace the torso, and hey mate, if you blow off the torso without destroying the arm falls off, and now you've got only a side torso that you have to repair. So that's pretty sweet. So those are the ways to destroy a battle mech. I have been the Mech Hunter, your special guest. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, share and subscribe if you'd like to see more Battletech content. Any questions, leave them in the comments down below. Have a lovely day.